Okay, so now we're going to learn a little bit about the sensors that are on the robot and how to use some of them. So we're going to talk about the general sensors, and then we're going to focus on the obstacle sensor to show you how some of those sensors work. So we have our module open, and in case you've forgotten to use the robotics module or to move the scribbler around the screen, we're going to use the Miro module. So I already have that open, but it's under Edit, Use a Module. Oops, and see some of these other things. Use a module, Miro. So that will load your module for you. And the sensors are way down at the bottom, so you've got M/senses. So I've pulled out the three main ones that I think will be most useful to you. There are some other things in here which you're welcome to look at. Um, we have get infrared, and those are on the back of the robot, which is where the the robot goes forward, and you can see the back of it. It has a little green thing at the front. Get light, which comes out of there's some sensors on the front, and there's three different ones of those. There's a left, a right, and a center. The infrared only has left and right, and we'll talk about all that in just a second. And the get obstacle is also on the front, and there's three of those. There's a left, right, and a center. So uh, for all of these, what you want to do, you get values out of them. The infrared sensors give you either 0 or 1. 0 meaning there's nothing in the way, 1 meaning there is something in the way. So it's either yes or no. Um, get light and get obstacle both give you number values. So what happens is the robot bounces a signal off of into its environment, off of an object, and it gets back a number. And based on that number, you can tell it what to do. So it doesn't know what to do unless you tell it. So the more light there is, the higher that number is. It goes into the thousands, so up to about 5,000-ish, I think. And get obstacle is the same. The higher the number is, the closer the object is, and it goes up into the thousands as well. And we'll demonstrate that in just a second. So let's just write a simple little program that has our robot go forward for a little bit, check to see if there's an obstacle, and if there is, go backward for a little bit. It's not a very exciting program, but it will demonstrate our senses. So we're going to pull our when the script starts, and then we're going to find our robot, our main robot stuff. We need to initialize our robot to start off with. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our robot go forward and then check for an obstacle and then back up if there's an obstacle in its way. We're just going to do this once, and then I'll show you in another video how to make this a little more interesting. I happen to have already tested this, so I know that if it goes forward for about 6.5 seconds, it's going to come close enough to the wall that it can see it, and it will back up. So first of all, we're going to have it go forward, and then we need it to detect an obstacle. Now, as I mentioned, this returns a number, and we need to do something with that number. And in order to do something with the number, we have to save that number somewhere. You might remember in a previous video that we talked about variables and saving things into variables. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do here. So I'm going to create a variable called obstacle, and I'm going to use the center sensor to get the data from. If I didn't tell it what position to get my data from, it would get it from all three, and it actually couldn't save it in a single variable. It would need three variables to work with, and I'll actually show you that in a little bit more complicated program. But most of the time, it's easier to use just a single sensor and save it in a single variable for most of the things that you're going to do. But I will show you how to do it in a little more complex way if you want. So what I have right now is I have the robot initializing, I have it going forward, and then I have it checking for an obstacle. Okay, and saving that information into a variable. So you can see that we have an equation here now, basically. We have obstacle equals get obstacle center. So that tells us whatever number you get out of this when you check to see if there's an obstacle, save it as this variable. So now we need to do something with that variable. So I'm going to go back up to control, and I'm going to use a statement called if true. So I'm going to stick that in here. And I need to tell it what to do. So I could leave it as if true, but that doesn't tell me if what is true. So what I want to do is I'm going to say, okay, if my obstacle is greater than 100, and that's a pretty low number, so if there's anything at all anywhere near me, I want you to tell me. So I'm going to say print out, hey, something's in my way. And then I want it to go, I'm going to have it move. I'm going to go to movement, and I'm going to have it back up and wait for further instruction from its master. I'm going to go backward just for a little bit. So back up and it'll wait. So let's run this and see what we get. So our robot should go forward. And then it will check for an obstacle, and it says, hey, there's something there. This is a little bit out of the window. Let me close. You saw it back up there, but it has printed to the screen here that something is indeed in its way, and it would like to get further instructions. So that's a very simple situation.